Hey Josh, how are you?
Hopefully you weren't watching me too long. Were you, Tom?
No, it's all right.
Oh, he's online and I didn't realize he was online already. So I was checking my email and he was watching me on the camera. No, no, no. You're in Texas, right?
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
in Texas. I think it'd be
Um,
kind of far. How's the weather?
it's sunny about 75 today.
75 and
Yeah,
sunny.
it'll be up in the mid 80s today. So
So I'm in Monterey. What are we usually? 60s to 80s? But it's really dreary today with the fog,
I yeah,
but I
well,
love it.
that's the way mornings are there. I've actually been to Monterey a couple times. In fact, I spent 3 days playing golf on Monterey years ago. My uncle lived in Sausalito. He was retired Coast Guard, and I happened to
Wow.
be out there when he was playing in a tournament. I played with him, and we played Spyglass, Poppy Hill, and
Yeah.
Pacific Grove. With
Yeah. It's
bunch of,
beautiful.
so yeah. So yeah. So anyway,
Yeah. Well, thanks for hopping on. I think you remember me. We met a few times at Best Practices,
yep.
and you always had great information. And I just love your heart for the ministry that you're always looking out for the next generation. And you also have the solidified intelligence where youth have the liquid intelligence that well, you're adaptive too. You're both. You have the experience, but also the ability to learn. And so I really appreciate that about you. And I
Yeah.
feel like,
Well, and that comes from years of working with teenagers and
yeah,
realizing what they could teach me. So yeah.
it kind of rubs off, I guess. So what do you do these days besides writing your weekly email, which I appreciate?
Um, I'm always working on writing projects. I I'm at DFW Airport 1 day a week as an ambassador.
Okay.
Uh, I basically help international travelers that are lost, anybody that's lost, but most of it's international travelers that are really intimidated by the airport, make sure they get to where they need to be. So do that. Try to play golf at least once a week, and then Saturdays I marshal at a golf course, making sure golfers are behaving themselves. And these during the summer months, it's more water, less beer, more water, less beer.
That's good. Stay hydrated.
So yeah, the course that I work at, our pro is really into 4 hour rounds. So much of what I do is make sure golfers are staying on schedule. So, oh yeah, that and chase grandkids. So,
Good. How
so
many?
yeah, we have five. Um, Two of them are local. Our oldest son and his family live in Baltimore, and he's got three teenage boys. All one of them is back in Texas, in Concordia, Austin. But our daughter's got a little boy who's 6, and then Hannah Grace is the apple of our eye because she's the only granddaughter, and she's 19 months. So
Hmm.
they spend they,
Congratulations. Yeah.
they spend a lot of time here. So
Good.
so
Good. Shall we pray? I could pray, and then you want to
yeah,
pray at
let's
the
do
end?
that. Yep.
God, thank you so much for giving us your church to serve. Please give us the discernment, the wisdom we need to support the next generation. As the world changes, the church needs to continue to reach out in ways that connect and engage and communicate. It seems like we end up kind of talking in a way that doesn't always resonate with the world, and we want to be able to share the same heart language to not give in to the sin or the temptation or the worldliness, but to be able to address it and to share who we are, because we hope that's a reflection of who you are in Jesus Christ. Please bless our time together in you. Amen.
Amen.
All right. So hopefully this isn't too weird. You're probably used to Zoom by now.
Yeah, I probably do at least at least one a day, and sometimes more than that. I also do some coaching, uh, and I'm part of the Texas district coaching team.
Good.
So yeah, and most of the coaching that I do these days is done via Zoom. So no, I'm really this is the world we live in.
Yeah, yeah. But to me, it's been encouraging to me how the church has learned how to adapt with, and COVID kind of forced the issue.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it was something that was happening, but COVID just accelerated everything. So
Yeah. And so right now we do one Zoom Bible study every week, and we have all our services online. And then I put up just a sermon later. So then if someone wanted to listen to a bunch of sermons in a row, they could. I always think about when people are in the hospital, it would be nice to just have that to listen to so you don't feel so alone.
yep.
I thought we could just kind of talk to touch base to see how you're doing and talk about the book you made. The plan right now is to go through it as Bible studies on Sunday morning during Advent, because there's about four of them, and there's four chapters in Jonah and your book. And then use the same sort of idea for the Wednesday service in the middle of the week, because we're on the lectionary still here at Bethlehem, and the Advent and Lent season to me are a great time to be able to pick the text you kind of study and work with. And with Advent, especially, you think about the prophets and they're talking about Jesus coming, and then Jonah is a minor prophet, and you can kind of see how God sent Jonah to Nineveh, just like Christ is sent to us, the Philippians
Hmm.
2 sort of thing. So I think it'll relate, it'll be good. But um, I don't know. So it seems like you're doing well. And what are some of the things that you kind of learned through COVID?
Um, Learned how much I miss being around people. Um,
Oh,
and that was probably the toughest thing. Um, I'm a hugger,
hmm,
and love the people at my church. Um, and to not be able to be with them and to, hug them, even hug my grandkids. Um, my wife and I are, my wife's a retired church musician, um, and we're members of Prince of Peace in Carrollton,
okay.
Texas, which is where our daughter's on staff. Our daughter is director of worship at Prince of Peace. So yeah, that was probably. I mean, and if I usually have music on when I write, and the song that kept coming up probably touched my heart more than any others during the pandemic was uh, Laura Story's uh, "Blessings in Disguise."
Hmm,
That sometimes the things that we see as being tragedies and hurts are really God's way of ministering to us, and they're blessings in disguise. So that's probably what I learned the most um, during the pandemic. Uh, how important people are in my life. So,
yeah.
but it's yeah, it was I would not have imagined um, going through something like that. So,
Yeah. And I just came to Monterey in December. So I was in Colorado for most of the pandemic, and I worked with a lot of teenagers and college students, and
so were you in Colorado?
the Grand Junction on the
Okay.
western slope.
Yeah.
Mike Rediker's there right now.
Okay. Our oldest son Peter uh, took a call to Baltimore, and he was as a mission developer, and he
Okay.
was he was installed the Wednesday before the pandemic hit.
Oh, yeah.
So he's planted a church in the midst of the pandemic. Um,
I saw a
but
few guys like that online.
so his
Ah,
church is called New Thing. So this is my new thing.
okay. There you
Uh,
go. If you live in Baltimore, go to that church. I have a friend out there, Kevin Barron. He's a pastor there.
yeah, he's the campus pastor at Concordia Prep in Baltimore, and then they started a worship community on campus.
Oh, yeah. So then they still kind of meet on campus in a way, even with masks and everything, or what did they do? Online?
Just totally online. Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So we ended up going on more hikes and things like that, and it was interesting to me how much all the students just needed a time to feel normal together because the world
Yeah,
was so abnormal. And their families all got together anyway. So they I only did things that their parents were comfortable with when we got together. So I made them follow their rules, but they still had time together. And we
yeah.
did more things online too.
And and the other thing that uh, missed during Starbucks was, or during COVID, was Starbucks. A neat little story about because I tend to do a lot of writing at Starbucks. At least I did before the pandemic, and I still like to do that. I'm not as disciplined as I was before, but I was probably spending at least 2 days a week, 3 days a week at Starbucks, and I always went to the same one. And because that's where millennials and Gen Zs tend to hang out.
Yeah.
I'm gonna relate to them. I want to be in their environment. So I got to know a lot of people who were there, especially the staff, and they were curious about who this old man was, what I was doing. So they when they found out that I was really there to study them and write about them, it was like they started calling me Pastor Tom. I didn't want to go into an explanation. I'm really not a pastor. I'm just,
Oh,
but anyway, and
close enough.
my life got intertwined with theirs, to the point that some of the kids, young people on staff started sharing stuff with them, and I actually prayed with one of them one day when they were going through some stuff, and then the pandemic hit,
Hmm.
and I couldn't go to Starbucks because they were closed, and I
Yeah.
went by there one day and saw there was a line for the drive-through. I thought, well, at least I could go through the drive-through, and get my fix of, I'm a coffee drinker.
Yeah.
Um, so anyway, went through and ordered my grande pike and got up to the window, and the little gal opened up the window and she looked and she screamed. She said, "It's Pastor
Oh,
Tom."
that's
And,
good.
and all of a sudden, all these faces were in the window, telling me how much they missed me and want to know what was going
Oh.
on. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, unfortunately, there was 100% turnover. So none of those folks were still at Starbucks when I went back. So, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's Starbucks really is kind of an innovate type place because it's a place that, might make us a little uncomfortable, but God really was calling me to go there and minister to those folks.
Yeah. And now you get a whole new flock over there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I still try to get there at least once a week. So,
Yeah. Um, well, so I guess before we get to Jonah, I really liked your other book too. To be honest, I didn't finish it, but I read most of it. But tearing down the silos and putting up tents, right?
hmm
And it's just talking about the church going out there into the world to connect people that I just went to Germany this summer with my dad and my brother. My dad's a pastor. My brother sang with Valparaiso and their choir at all the Luther cathedrals and everything over there. So that we took all the Luther tours and the Bach tours and all that thing. Um, but something I think we miss generally as Lutherans in America is it's not about Germanic cultural heritage or even Wittenberg or these places. What Martin Luther was doing was he was using this brand new technology, the printing press, and he was speaking in the people's language and he was trying to get the word of God in a way that the common man could finally understand it. And it seems like that's a challenge for today. There's so many beautiful cathedrals but they're empty. And so you could see how they invested in the building, but not in the people. And so then the people ended up leaving, especially post COVID. It seems like there's a lot of people who need help. And so here we have adoptive families, we invest in them, we try to be there for them, not to make them dependent, but help them get back on their feet. We have an I help program to help homeless people. They go through a whole application process, and it's just a limited program until they find a place to be. We just got housing for someone out in Sacramento. But how do you think the church could continue to do that? Like from your book, tearing down the silo and building tents, what are some of your ideas?
Um, it's interesting you say that. I just read an article, and it's probably going to be the basis for my newsletter in a week or two. But the archdiocese in Baltimore is wondering what to do with all their buildings, because there's like 40 some parishes. Now, a typical Sunday now, they only worship around 2,000 combined. What do you do with those buildings? You know, and we're facing some of the same things. Here in Dallas, there's probably it's not there's not that many Lutheran churches and LCMS churches in Dallas, but there's 5 or 6, and I would say that um, all but one of them, I suspect, will probably be on in the next 20 years. I mean, they're just, you know, and what do we do with those buildings? Um, and I see them as really being, you know, mission up.
Yeah.
People get attached to the building. They want to continue to worship there. Why can't we turn them into community centers?
Yeah, yeah, and you look at the demographic of our synod, and it seems like what's going to happen is as the generation kind of phases out, we'll have the finances, but not the people.
And
And,
what would it look like if there's a couple churches in the Dallas Fort Worth area that are really flourishing, but they're in the suburbs. You
right.
what would it look like if each of those churches adopted an urban church and invested in the ministry there, not
Yeah.
in growing a congregation, but in terms of ministering to the community like you're doing, homeless people, food pantry, ESL classes, legal services, teaching basic computer skills. Um,
Well, a lot of time you have people in the congregation who have these gifts that they could share too. You just
yeah,
make the
you know,
connection.
what would it
Oh, I'm losing
what
you.
would it look like
Oh,
if each one of those operated an after school program for
yeah.
kids, because there's a lot of those kids in the urban environment who go home to empty houses. If they came to the church after school and there were some adults there who, fed them snacks and tutored them on their homework and taught them, basic life skills.
Yeah.
And the mom could pick them up when she was done working. And I think that would be an awesome opportunity.
Yeah, just to be
Um,
there for them,
yeah,
like a
um,
family.
yeah. So anyway, that's one of the things that I think about.
Thank you.
Um, and that was we need to get past the thinking in terms of growing congregations, in terms of numeric numbers, how many people are coming, how many lives are we, and how many people Jesus through us.
Yeah.
Um,
And that was a big emphasis, especially when I first got here, is we need our mission statement is we worship God as a loving community that grows in faith and shares the gospel. And so when you think of we worship God, does that just mean Sunday for an hour and then everything gets done in that hour? That you'd really have to be specific on what you're doing in that
I,
hour. It has to
Our
go throughout the week. You're worshiping God all the time.
Micah Miller, our pastor, reminds us it's not really his idea. He got it from somebody else. The church is like an aircraft carrier where we land on Sunday morning and we're refueled and refreshed
Yeah,
and launched back to another mission.
yeah, for sure.
Um, I really like that concept. So,
Yeah. Well, and someone the other day asked me, why do you try to do things on Wednesdays too? And it's because you need that refueling sometimes halfway through the week.
yep.
Um, but we're very blessed here. The whole California, Nevada, Hawaii district has a different sort of missions model. They're not really looking for huge churches. They just are looking for churches that'll be there for the community. So we have a
And
church.
Michael Lang is your president.
Yeah, yeah.
Would you believe my wife was his second grade teacher
Wow. She did a good job.
in
She-
Cape Girardeau, Missouri, and we were there
Wow.
from 1969 to 72. Yes, Michael was one of her students. So that
Yeah.
makes us really, really old.
Oh no. But but for me it's just
So yeah.
for me I'm a millennial, so it's interesting working with so many different generations, and most of, well, it's kind of changing. We're getting a lot of younger people now, but a good amount of them think so differently than I do about everything, and so it's just constant need for communication and forgiveness and listening to each other to try to figure out what we mean. And I think that big church mentality is part of it. Is they remember the glory days when we used to have Fort Ord here, and we had a big school and big congregation, and now I think they just need to realize what they have already, even as a smaller congregation. They have so much impact throughout the week, and they're all so strong in the faith. They might not know every single detail about the Bible, but they have the heart and the passion that actually cares for people. And just to share that throughout the week, they would have so much more area of impact than they would just on that Sunday morning if the church
Oh
was
yeah,
full.
yeah.
And so we have a ministry center here. The other church close by has one too. And so we just started a school, an academy. We just started working with a sort of a healthy organization, Blue Zones in the area. So we're really trying to make all these connections and use what we have. And especially being in Monterey, we see there is value in having property here, but it's not just as the church. This is a place where we're a community and we're growing together in
Yeah,
faith, and we're
yeah.
using that. Um, so that's good, and hopefully other churches kind of are similar, if they aren't already. And the church used to be more of a community center than it kind of was this last generation. I don't know. Any other advice? I bet you could
No,
go.
no, that's about it. That was the whole point of writing the Bible study on Jonah was that, God is calling us to places that we don't want to go to minister to people we might not even like.
Yeah, and I love the book of Jonah and that you picked it. And so many people just get distracted by the big fish, and that's all they want to talk about. And they miss the fact that, well, first Jonah says no, and he goes the wrong direction. But you think about it even more, and you see what happens. And like you said, but wasn't there a God in charge of the wind and the waters that the Ninevites believed in? And it shows that our God is more powerful than that God, a dad, right? Our God is stronger. He's the one actually in control of all these things. And the people on the boat who are with Jonah going the wrong direction find out about our God instead. And so they never would have believed if he hadn't gone the wrong way. And they throw him off, and God saves him in the midst of the storm. Their God couldn't do that. And
And the book of Jonah is the only book in the Bible that I'm aware of that ends with a question. Don't I have the right to care about those people?
uh, yeah,
God is telling us that people that we cross paths with, even those that are culturally different than us, God is saying, don't I have the right to care about those people? And how are they going to know me unless you relate to
Yeah.
them? And I think about that whenever I go into a convenience store and across the counter, probably Middle Eastern, and you know, or race or religion. Um, God cares about them. So,
And that's why he sent you, right? Or part of it.
um, so anyway, that was kind of the impetus for writing the book. God is calling us to go to places that make us uncomfortable, people we don't want,
Yeah.
because he loves them just like he loves us. Oh no, and I probably will do another. I'm not sure what one it's going to be yet, but I probably do at least another Bible study or two that are similar kind of themes.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. So besides this being a prophet and perfect for Advent, for Wednesdays, for Sundays, it's also going to be a way, hopefully, I get our people excited about inviting people to come to Christmas. Because that's something most people still celebrate, even if they don't usually go to
Hmm.
church. So Bethlehem seems like a great place to go for Christmas. And um, but just a few other things from Jonah is his prayer is so amazing in chapter 2.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. We can really learn um, how to lament. That that's really should be part of our routine.
Yeah.
That we acknowledge our broken and not dwell on it, but acknowledge it and express it. Um, so yeah, it really is a rich prayer.
Yeah. And so, what do you think about at the end where Jonah's just upset with God for caring about these people?
That's how many times have I, and I'm trying to pull up, um, how many times during my ministry I invested myself in something, you know, and then when the results are not what I expect, God does what he wants to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're not the ones who, you know, and um, or to question in his act. God is, you know, God is at work, and important thing to remember. We might not always like the way he's working, but he's had a pretty good track record over, you know.
Well, so I don't know about you, but people tend to bring up critical mass for different things, talking about youth group or Bible study or church. What's the critical mass? How many people do you need to have there to make it worth it? And I did a Christian ministry in the national parks. I don't know if you're familiar with that or not, but basically you have a job at a national park at usually a resort, and then you lead worship on the weekends. And so a lot of times no one shows up, and sometimes two people show up. And you could say, oh, only two people showed up, or you could say two people showed up. And wherever two or three are gathered, that means God was there. And to me, I just don't like the idea of critical mass. That maybe if you're spending a lot of money on what you're doing together, but if it's just time together and you're talking about God, and shouldn't you just be grateful for that and don't neglect to do that?
Even if nobody shows up, there's still two people there.
Yeah, Yeah, well, and God intends that sometimes too. I
Yeah,
can't tell
yeah.
you how many times in Glacier National Park we had a weekly Bible study and it was just me.
Just yeah, well, and that's a
And
case where
God.
God is saying, you and I need to have a conversation.
It worked, it helped. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we need to get past, the new metrics in the church. I mean, the old metrics were when you got together at pastoral conference, everybody would walk around, well, how many did you have in church last Sunday?
Oh, I never ask
Just,
anyone that. That's
and that's the old metric, just that it's how many, it's not relevant anymore.
well, and maybe it's just the way I think too, is I never think about the numbers. I think about the people. So if
Yep.
someone asks me how many people did you have at Bible class, I say, well, there was Julia and Sonia and Sally and Bob. Like I would just remember all the people. The number is beside the point.
Mhm. Yeah. It's if there's only two people that show up, well, that makes for a pretty intimate conversation. If
And
you
you
got
need that.
and if you got 50, much more challenging to relate to all 50 of them on a personal one-on-one level, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, um,
It's like God knows what he's doing sometimes.
yeah.
But we don't always know what he's doing.
Uh, yeah. So anyway, that's kind of where we're where we're at. So
Yeah. Do you have any good stories or anything that go with this kind of idea of going to people that you might not necessarily expect to reach out to?
um the Starbucks story.
Hmm.
The When I first retired, well, for about 10 years, I worked for a hospital chaplaincy service. Um, when I retired at 61, I wasn't planning on it. I was spent the last 11 years as a school counselor at Lutheran High School in Dallas. I was also the varsity basketball coach. I've done a lot of basketball coaching over the years. But my position was eliminated. They had to make some budget cuts. And at 61, you know, I had to retire and we weren't planning on that. So I needed to find something to supplement my income. And just happened, our oldest son had a good friend whose dad had this chaplaincy service and he was looking for some people to come and come alongside him. And I said, I'm not trained as a chaplain. He said, no, if you know Jesus and you have a heart for people, you can do this. Um, we worked with LTACs, long-term acute care hospitals. And so at one point in time, I had 5 hospitals that I was working with. Basically make the rounds and visit with people. And LTACs was really kind of neat because I had to be there at least 2 weeks, and I could be there as long as 6 to 8. So I could actually have a relationship with. But then I would get called to a lot of times in situations where somebody was dying or had died. I had no back with them before. I just kind of walked the patient and administered to them. And one Friday afternoon, I got a phone call from one of my hospitals saying that a family had requested that, you know, chaplain. And so I drove over there and went to the nurse's station to check in like I always did. And case manager said, I want to tip you off. They're Buddhist, but they specifically asked for a Christian chaplain.
Hmm.
Oh, my natural inclination was, I'm not sure that about this situation, but you know, let's just go with the flow, and God is obviously has me here for a reason. So I walked into the room and there was a young woman next to the bed holding man's hand. It was her dad, was the daughter. And in the back, in the corner of the room was a woman who was dressed in, Buddhist apparel, and she was obviously weepy, you know. So I walked into the room and introduced myself to the daughter, and she said, thanks. And she said, all day my dad has been reaching up like this. And I said, what do you think he's reaching for? And she said, I think he sees this. So I looked at the man, and and he was out of breathing, so he could not. He was on a
Yeah.
vent, so he could not talk to me. But I introduced myself, and I said, "So are you seeing Jesus?" Eyes got real big,
Wow.
and I said, "So do you want to hear the story?" And he kind of. So I walked him through the whole story of salvation,
Wow.
and said, "Do you believe this?" And I said, "Well, then you and I are going to have a conversation."
Hmm. Cool.
And I prayed with him and his daughter, and I'm looking forward to having that conversation. And I think that's a Nineveh experience. God is calling us to places that we're uncomfortable, to talk to people who we have no connection with. But so anyway,
Yeah. But God wants that connection.
you never know where God is calling us to, and he wants us to just go there without any fear and just be Jesus.
Yeah.
God bless you on this Bible study.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. Could you pray for us and for Monterey,
Yeah, your church is
Bethlehem?
Bethlehem.
And we have Faith and Seaside that we work pretty close together too, especially with youth sort of things.
I served Bethlehem Lutheran Church in Dundee, Illinois for 8.
Oh yeah. So if you want to look up our services, you have to do Bethlehem Monterey because if you put
Yeah,
Bethlehem Lutheran Church, there's a lot of those.
yeah. This is northwest suburbs of Chicago. So
Okay.
gracious Father, I just thank you for this conversation, and I thank for his ministry that he Monterey, Monterey, and we know you are calling him and his people to be Jesus, the lives of those around them. Being called to places to minister to people that they don't even know, have no connection with, yet you are calling us to places that make us uncomfortable. They there might come to help us to venture out. Father, it's a very different world that we live in, but we know that you are still God who is in charge. Help us to be your people and pray this in a strong name of Jesus. So
Amen. You're breaking up a little bit.
I hope you're going to be in Phoenix again. I look forward to always connecting with people. So I
Oh
just,
yeah. Yeah, we didn't get to talk last time, but I was there. I try to go every year
yeah,
and I try to help with the Christian ministry in the national park booth, but they know that I like to go around talking to everyone. So they understand they have a good group that stays at the table the whole time and I help when I can. So
well, I'm hoping to present again, and we'll see. I always send in some proposals, and we'll see if they like. But
yeah,
don't
it's
worry,
always good.
one way or the other, I will be there because that's where I network with people like you.
Yeah, yeah. Have you ever thought about doing kind of a tag team presentation with another DCE or something like that? That could be fun for you.
I'm doing a tag team with our district coaching team
Okay.
on coaching. Um, yeah, that would, and I would, would think about that. Yeah, I do have a partner in ministry in Tina Jason, who's on the
All
ex,
right.
and I keep telling Tina that she needs to be at best practices, and if that would multiply our presence. So we'll see.
Hmm.
But
Do you have any good resources for coaching? Because I feel like it's just something I was never really trained in. And then our circuit visitor was asking if I knew any good coaching questions, and I kind of naturally came up with some, but I wish I kind of had the resource to.
um, yeah, Gary Shopper when you were at the seminary.
I don't think so.
He was at St. Louis Seminary for a long time. He was the one who Dr. Gary Shopper, who certified pastors for ministry. He had a background in counseling.
How do you spell his last name?
Shaper.
Okay.
So he's the one who's trained us. And I'm going to go over to the bookshelf and see if I can
Okay.
get us reading. He's always looking for stuff for us. Yeah, here it is. Coaching hacks.
Coaching hacks. Okay. So one thing we're really blessed with here is we have a Defense Language Institute and the National Postgraduate School. So a lot of younger military men and women who just they need coaching in the faith because they're kind of in a transitional period and they're at a point in their life where they're still kind of figuring out God's call and learning how to fulfill it. And where it gets
The
outpost.
subtitle is Simple Strategies for Making Every Conversation Effective.
Okay. So basically, trust God, right?
Listen.
Yeah, listen. A wise man once said nothing.
That's exactly it. So,
All right, it's been good, Tom, and I'll see you in
God,
Phoenix.
God bless you, my friend. If there's
Thanks.
anything else I can do, let me know.
All
We've done
right,
this
well,
once, so we can do it again. So,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. Bye.
Good talking to you, Josh. Bye.